Everyone loves Kirby's copy abilities, right? Despite technically not being present in the first game, it's pretty much the main thing Kirby's known for. Swallow an enemy and boom! Kirby transforms into
whatever the situation demands.
Yeah. And with a cute new hat to boot. These hats are a huge part of Kirby's appeal, as it means that Kirby can basically look like, well, anything. Sometimes he's in a full-on mech suit, other times he's wearing a puffy jester hat, and there are even times where all he needs is a simple headband. No matter what though, each ability's designs manage to stand out on their own without feeling out of place, even as more and more copy abilities are added to the series. And it was when I decided to rank the copy ability designs on a tier list that I began to ask myself what exactly makes these abilities as good as they are. This is what made me realize there is far more going into these designs than just making cute hats for Kirby to wear. Ability hats are fine-tuned to not only reflect what their ability does, but also boost their appeal, to the point that these abilities just wouldn't be nearly as charming without them. Not only did my analysis completely change the way I view copy abilities, it also completely changed the way I looked at their role in the series as a whole. So, let's look at a handful of copy abilities and see just what exactly makes their hats and outfits so integral to the series. Of course, I gotta start off with what's probably the most iconic copy ability of all time. Even people who aren't Kirby fans have probably seen Kirby in this striking green hat before. The hat itself is a reference to Link's hat from the Zelda series. And maybe I'm a little biased, but if we're being honest, Kirby pulls it off way better than Link does. Don't tell Zelda fans I said that though. What makes this design work so well for Kirby is the fact that it emphasizes his movements. Whether he's running, jumping, sliding, or climbing on ladders, the hat is always trailing behind him and following his movements, something made even more noticeable by the yellow bob at the end of the hat. And because Kirby's body is so small, the hat is very readable. While this same trait is something you can see in many of Kirby's other ability designs, Sword is a little special in this regard. Sword's animations generally focus on feeling snappy and flashy. What this means is that for every down thrust or drill stab, the hat extends, as if it's being caught off guard by Kirby's sudden burst in speed. For each slash in his multi-strike, the hat bobs and weaves in accordance to the sword's movements. And any spin slash or twister slash will have the hat strung along in the vortex. While Sword's combos are satisfying on their own, it's this little extra detail that makes them even more satisfying. It's because of this that Sword's design manages to feel dynamic even when it's still, which is why it looks so good in renders and artwork. This all comes together with the excellent color choices. The green and yellow on the cap are a striking combo on their own, but it really shines in the contrast it has with his body. The colors of both Kirby and the Sword hat stand out from one another without feeling cluttered. This creates a nice contrast between the hat and the sword, as the green and yellow always stay visible in the white flurry of sword slashes. Okay, so quick aside. Kirby Air Riders came out while I was making the video, and it has a lot of copy abilities taking cues from their older designs. While Sword's design is very similar to how it was in Superstar and the original Air Ride, there are a few tweaks, like the new indents on the sword and the yellow gem from the modern games. More importantly though, when in use, the sword gains a blue aura that simulates the same effect the Silver Sword has in the modern games. It sort of alleviates the problem I had with the Gold Sword. Personally, I still like the Silver Sword better, but this is a nice middle ground I can get behind. All in all, Sword has a very solid design. It manages to tread that line of cute and cool in style, just like Kirby himself. It's what makes it such a solid ability to be introduced to the series to. Though I will say there is one ability that has it beaten out in that aspect. Beam is an interesting copy ability. While I wouldn't say it's quite as recognizable as Sword, its design is still just as important, if not more so. This is because Beam typically serves the important role of the first copy ability, as in it's usually the first ability the player can copy in many Kirby games. This means that Beam's design will need to give the player a basic indication of what copy abilities are as well as what they do, all in a smooth and digestible way. Beam's design manages to do all this with flying colors, even in the design's first appearance. Speaking of, this is one of the few copy abilities that change Kirby's colors in Kirby Superstar. This, on its own, is a great design choice because it immediately gives the player feedback that something about Kirby has changed. At the same time, the hat and feet add orange and red, or magenta, to the overall design, giving Beam a very warm color palette. The main idea of the design is still to depict the change in mechanics, which is why the striking yellow takes up most of the design. But this is supported by the additional colors, which communicate that this is a welcoming change. What's cool about the colors is that they're also used in all of Beam's attacks. Red and orange for Beam Whip and Beam Blast, yellow for Capture Beam and Wave Beam, and blue for Cycle Beam, which comes from the blue color of the jewel on Kirby's wand. Interestingly enough, this is part of the reason why the design still works in later games where they no longer change Kirby's color. In modern games, Kirby's beams are adjusted to be a mix of pink, purple, orange, and yellow, which matches well with the colors of the current design. No matter what colors the beams are, the developers make sure they're a very satisfying light show, which is actually the last aspect of the design I want to talk about. If you haven't noticed, the hat Beam Kirby wears is a jester hat, and given what we talked about, this makes sense. Most of Beam's attacks don't just feel like, well, attacks, but more like a light show. It's almost like Kirby is putting on his own magic performance. Even Kirby's yellow color could be attributed to face paint performers use on stage. Of course, the question then arises, who exactly is he putting on a show for? Who is the audience? Well, the answer's us, the players. Under this context, it makes perfect sense as to why the Jester hat was chosen. It's the perfect representative for copy abilities as a whole, as really any copy ability can be looked at as a performance on the stage that are the Kirby video games. Come one, come all, and watch as Kirby performs magic and wizardry beyond your imagination. Look and be amazed as our very own Swordmaster Kirby performs the techniques of a legendary hero. Stand in awe of our superstar as he tames the very element of fire itself and transforms into the living torch. Well, I use words like watch and look and stand in awe, but those aren't really the right words, since Kirby's performances take place in a unique medium where we, the audience, are directly influencing his actions. By picking up the controller and playing Kirby games, it's like the player is also taking part in these performances through Kirby's special abilities. And I must say, Kirby's copy abilities make him a very versatile actor, one that can don almost any role, from park rangers to ace pilots. But at the end of the day, the spirit of the Jester hat can be felt in every copy ability, because they're all roles donned with the intention of wowing and entertaining us, the players. And it's because of this that I couldn't possibly think of a more fitting design for the copy ability meant to introduce the player to all copy abilities. It's no wonder that Beam Kirby is proudly displayed on the title screen of the game that first introduced costumes for copy abilities. For this next bit, I'm going to talk about 3 abilities at once, since their designs were introduced at the same time and share many design elements. Fire, Ice, and Plasma are some of the most important copy ability designs in the series, since pretty much every elemental Kirby copy ability designed afterwards were based on their designs. First thing you'll notice about these designs is that they each have some type of crown in their respective element erupting out at the top. Having the element attached to the crown like this does a great job in portraying Kirby's mastery over their respective element. It's like Kirby now rules over these elements and can command them as he pleases. A cool detail about these abilities is that each version of the design acts differently to reflect the element and its playstyle. Of the elemental abilities, Fire is one of the easiest and most straightforward to get a grasp of, yet it can be very destructive in the right hands. Ice's crown, on the other hand, is solid and sturdy, which is reflective of its ability to freeze enemies in their tracks and send them crashing forward. It may be pretty, but in a similar manner to Fire, Ice can be scarily efficient at clearing out hordes of enemies. Plasma is the most chaotic of the bunch, sparking and fritzing around wildly, which is representative of the way the player can build up energy by mashing the control pad for its attacks. Out of all the elemental abilities, this is the one that's portrayed to have the most overwhelming destructive potential and is no stranger to shredding boss health bars. These traits are all conveyed in the metal parts of the crowns too, with Fires being gold and wavy, Ice being purple and straight, and Plasma being silver and lightning shaped. My only real issue with these designs is a minor one, and it's that the crowns bring a lot of attention to the top of Kirby's head, yet none of these abilities really use this for their attacks. Kirby can manifest these elements from his hands to his feet to even all over his body, but never from the crown specifically. which creates a minor disconnect between the moveset and the design, I feel. And it's not that the attacks themselves don't feel creative. It's very satisfying to see fire light itself ablaze, ice skating around and using ice constructs to shield itself, and plasma shooting off shots like cannonballs. But I feel my point still stands, as none of these attacks have much of anything to do with the crown itself. This really isn't a big issue, honestly calling it an issue at all feels like a stretch, but I do feel like this was remedied with the designs we see in Kirby Superstar, where each ability gave a different color in correspondence with its element. What I like about these color changes is that they don't feel like face paint or body spray, but more like Kirby's been changed by these elements internally. Fire Kirby looks like he's had his marshmallowy pink toasted to a nice shade of magenta, Ice Kirby is blue and purple, colors which the skin becomes during hypothermia, and Plasma Kirby, my favorite of them all, looks like he swallowed a gallon of radioactive battery acid. These, to me, better connect the attacks to their designs, since I feel like I could feel the effects of the respective elements just by touching Kirby's body. One last small detail to know about these abilities is that they all have jewels in their crown, a trend that, in modern games, can be seen in most abilities that manipulate energy or the elements in some way. In fact, both abilities we covered do this too, with the blue jewels in Beam's wand and the orange jewel in the hilt of Sword's sword. It's a cool little design trend that you see with a ton of different abilities, so let me know your favorite iteration of this in the comments. Ready for a lukewarm take? This is one of the best copy ability designs they've ever created. Beetle Kirby is unique in the sense that the headwear is actually the weapon in and of itself. It's not exactly the first to pull off the weapon hat concepts, but I would say it dives the most into its idea. Despite its simple design, it's actually quite chock full of features. But to keep things simple, let's start off with the most obvious. Most of Beetle's attacks center around Kirby using that big ol' horn of his to his advantage, from unleashing a flurry of horn thrusts or even picking up and tossing his enemies. In all fairness, we have seen these ideas in other abilities, like Sword and Suplex, but what makes Beetle Kirby feel unique is in how they animate him. Each attack needs to have Kirby twist and thrust his entire body, and this creates fun animations where Kirby is basically headbanging during his horn flurry, or spinning his whole body around to perform his spiral horn. Because Kirby needs to put his whole body into these attacks to swing that horn, it makes the hat itself feel heavy and the attacks feel hefty. This heftiness is informed by the design of the hat itself. While I did call the ability design simple, it is a tad more complex than some of the other abilities we've covered so far. For starters, it's decently big, even bigger than the likes of Fire and the other elemental crowns. Most of the hat itself is composed of this Beetle exoskeleton, which has this glossy, lustrous sheen that almost makes it look like metal. This is accompanied by the gold adorning it, which does well in highlighting the hilt of the horn. The gold parts at the end of the hat seem to be designed in a way that isn't too dissimilar to a samurai helmet, which fits with how the horn is swung around like a sword for many attacks. The combination of the metallic look and the size of the helmet give it that dense look that make its attacks feel more effective, something directly used in its Hornhead Slam attack. And yet, despite this weight, the ability manages to be pretty mobile, which is thanks to the helmet's additional function. If you look at the back, you'll notice the helmet also has a pair of Beetle wings, which provide the Beetle ability with some extra mobility. In addition to Kirby's own strength, these wings are what give Kirby that extra bit of speed for attacks like Spiral Horn and Rocket Horn. Speaking of Rocket Horn, this is where that last bit comes into play. As if the horn wasn't big enough already, Kirby is actually able to grow his horn and use it to skewer multiple enemies at once. This attack is animated in a really cool way. If we slow down the footage, you can actually see Kirby angle himself before the wings send him blasting forward. These wings can then lift Kirby, his massive horn, and whatever and whoever he stabbed up into the air before sending them rocketing back into the ground for the rocket horn dive. It all happens so fast, but it's a really cool way for the designers to utilize each aspect of Beetle design for this attack. In fact, I would say the overall reason I love this ability's design so much is because it feels like they took almost everything from the Beetle concept and managed to put it all in an ability, in a fun and creative way without it feeling crammed or forced. It all comes together in a natural and satisfying way. The last ability is going to be a bit of a surprise pick, but I really wanted to talk about the Master ability, an ability exclusive to Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. And I know some of you watching are thinking, isn't this just Sword Kirby without the hat you like so much and holding a cracked out sword instead? And while the answer is yes, kinda, there is actually a lot of thought that went into this design that I want to talk about. For starters, the Master ability isn't just one of your run-of-the-mill copy abilities. For those who don't know, Master is a very rare ability that can only be used if Kirby gets his hands on the legendary sword Galaxia. Where exactly can Kirby get this sword? Well, from none other than the lone swordsman Meta Knight. As you might expect, this isn't something that'll happen every day. In fact, it's only happened once, in Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. What made this moment truly special is that, well, it was unprecedented at the time, especially given the two's relationship. At this point in the series, Kirby and Meta Knight have had a bit of a dicey relationship, to say the least. Anytime the Masked Knight appeared, it usually resulted in a duel, yet his true motivations and allegiances were always hard to tell. His last major appearance in a Kirby game before Amazing Mirror was in Kirby Superstar, where he played an antagonistic role in an attempt to end Dreamland's laziness, a goal that stands in direct opposition to who Kirby is. The story ends with Kirby thwarting Meta Knight's plans head-on in a tense one-on-one duel where Meta Knight tells Kirby to prepare to die. And yet, despite their history, Meta Knight has had enough faith in Kirby to entrust his very own sword to him, which is usually the most prized possession of any swordsman. This essentially means that, just by existing, the Master Copy ability symbolizes the unspoken trust and the unique relationship between Meta Knight and Kirby. Now, to talk more on the design of Master itself, you might have noticed something. The sword looks quite different in Kirby's hands than it does when being used by Meta Knight. While there have been a few instances of Galaxia flaring up in Meta Knight's hands, mostly in artwork, it's never been quite as prominent as this. I feel this was done intentionally, as these differences are meant to highlight their differences as characters. As I stated before, Meta Knight's sword isn't typically surging in his hands. It's pretty consistently depicted in a firm and rigid state. This lines up with what we know about Meta Knight's personality. He is someone who's very strict on himself, constantly undergoing rigorous training in order to strengthen himself. This self-discipline has been portrayed as so fine-tuned that it's even been able to fend off mind control, though I am getting ahead of myself. The point is, this rigid nature is what's being reflected and manifested in Galaxia when Meta Knight wields it. Kirby, on the other hand, is quite literally the opposite. Kirby is laid back, almost to a fault. In fact, in most Kirby games, Meta Knight is usually the first to sense and intercept the oncoming danger, while Kirby is typically absent-mindedly goofing off elsewhere. He's almost like an animal, in the sense that he just follows his instincts and goes with the flow, eating as soon as he gets hungry and sleeping as soon as he gets tired. What makes Kirby special is that his strength doesn't come from discipline or training. It comes from his ability to appreciate and embrace all aspects of the world around him, even the parts that may seem to be silly or unproductive. Not only is this reflected in his ability to, well, copy abilities, it's also made manifest in Galaxia. For someone who lives their everyday life so freely, it makes sense that in Kirby's hands, the legendary blade erupts with energy, surging and fritzing in a controlled chaos. This divide between Meta Knight and Kirby is even reflected in their respective sword styles. Meta Knight's attacks are fine-tuned and precise, unleashed with such blinding speed that there's little to no time for reaction. It's a far cry in a series where boss attacks can range from dropping apples to falling flat on their face. It matches Meta Knight's no-nonsense attitude and is fitting for someone who's always depicted to be honing their skills and training to be the best version of themselves they can be. On the other hand, Kirby's attacks are unrestrained, straightforward, and multi-purpose. Instead of being hardened from training like Meta Knight, Kirby's proficiency seems to stem from a combination of talent, adaptability, and creativity. In fact, Kirby even seems to have integrated traits from other copy abilities too, like Beam's Charge Beam, Sword's Multi-Slash, and Burning's Tackle Attack. And of course, the sword's energy isn't too dissimilar to the crown on Kirby's electric-based copy abilities. And since Kirby is all about taking traits from the world around him, there's even an attack here taken directly from Meta Knight himself. This combination of different traits matches his simple yet malleable character. I've seen some say that Kirby is bringing out Galaxia's true potential, and while I don't hate that interpretation, I don't believe it was the intention when designing the Master ability. Instead, I believe it was meant to show the differences between Meta Knight and Kirby and show why their differences matter. To me, there is no true form to Galaxia, just different forms it can take on as a result of the wielder. Looking at it this way, it makes sense why the Master ability doesn't have a hat like the other copy abilities we talked about. I mentioned before with Beam that the hats act as Kirby donning roles for his new performances. With Fire, he becomes the ruler of flames. For Sword, he's the legendary hero. For Beetle, he's the king of bugs. But for Master, Kirby is Kirby. If Galaxia is a sword that takes a form after who the wielder really is, then of course, for this copy ability, Kirby doesn't need to play a role. He simply needs to be himself. And the fact that this is what makes Galaxia erupt with energy is a testament to Kirby's character. What makes matters more interesting are the traits taken from other copy abilities with Master. The fact that Kirby is able to take from his previous roles without needing to don them communicates that, despite his transformations, no matter how much he changes, Kirby is still Kirby. From the beginning of the series, Kirby has always been associated with the spring breeze. Just as the wind can change speed and direction on a whim, so too does Kirby, who always flows freely at his own pace. Similarly, air can't be contained, yet it can take the shape of whatever it pleases, just as how Kirby can't be controlled but can express the form of whatever he pleases through his many copy abilities. And in turn, if Kirby is the spring breeze, Meta Knight is like a mountain, strong, rigid, and its shape only becomes more and more complex over time. It is immovable thanks to its rock-solid foundation, which isn't too dissimilar to how Meta Knight's discipline makes him someone who can't be swayed by simple temptations. These differences are what make the two special, and Galaxia serves as a symbol to show the beauty in these differences. It even goes beyond that, as Meta Knight's decision to lend Kirby the sword shows an appreciation for these differences. He places faith in Kirby, knowing firsthand how different the two are. In fact, it's because he appreciated these differences that Meta Knight placed so much faith in Kirby to begin with. The main reason I love the Master ability so much is that, by being so different from Meta Knight, Galaxia is characterized as a weapon that celebrates individuality and embraces differences. And in turn, it loops back around to Kirby in his copy abilities. Really, accepting and appreciating differences are what they're all about, aren't they? After all, it's what we've been doing this entire video, as we looked at multiple different copy abilities. No two abilities are designed in the exact same way, or are great for the exact same reasons. They each bring their own special strengths and traits to the table. It's because of this that I can't help but liken the individuality of copy abilities to the individuality of people. Just as each copy ability has its own traits that make them special, so too do the people around us. Everyone is special in their own way, and as shown with Meta Knight and Kirby through Galaxia, these differences should be acknowledged and celebrated. Thank you everyone for watching. To those who made it this far, I'd be interested in knowing what's your favorite trait of the abilities we've covered thus far. And of course, if there's an ability you love that I haven't covered, let me know why you love it so much, and I might just be inspired to include it in a potential sequel video. Thank you again for watching everyone. I'll see you next time.